Hi, I'm Ashley Adamson, and I want to talk to you today about the problem of the trans narrative and how it can make it more difficult for trans people to recognize that they are trans. Because there is a dominant narrative, and this dominant narrative is, I've always known. And while I can agree that for me, I have always known, it doesn't necessarily mean that my conscious mind always knew. So we're going to dive into that today, and we're going to talk about some tips and ways that you can kind of work through this and kind of deconstruct this trans narrative a bit, because I think it's pretty pervasive and it makes it hard for people that don't fit within that trans narrative to understand where they are in the trans experience and if they are trans. Maybe they're not, maybe you're not. Where are you in that journey? Let me know in the comments down below. Let's dive into that. So I'll start with my trans narrative. My trans narrative is basically like, when I was much older, in my mid-20s, I figured out that I was probably not cis, and then I went through exploration, and then eventually realized that I was non-binary, and then eventually realized that I was actually a trans woman, and that I was in denial of being a woman because that frightened me too much. That's kind of what happened. Now, here's some stories and narratives that I told myself that kind of stopped me from really acknowledging, first, that I was trans, and second, that I was a trans woman. The first one is that the narrative of trans people is that they always talk about how, and this is like, the 95% case. This doesn't mean that there aren't other stories, because, I don't have the same story and other people don't have the same story. But it's like, they always say, I've always known. I've known since I was a kid. I've known since I was a child. And that narrative creates this perception that if you don't have that, I've known since I was a kid, that I must not be trans, because I would already know. And these people have known their entire life, and they just knew that. And I don't have that kind of knowing, so how could I possibly be trans if that's not really what I have? The second one is, I'm happy in my body. Like life is fine. Like I'm doing good. I'm not feeling super depressed. And, I look at my body and I feel okay about it. And like these people that are trans, they have this crippling gender dysphoria, and they're really upset about their body, and so that's a very clear reason as to why they should transition and why they want to, because they've always known, right? I didn't have either of these two symptoms, and so it kind of made it very hard for me to recognize this, because I was doing fine. Like, I was relatively successful for myself. I was fine with my body. I had good relationships with friends, family, and loved ones. And I didn't always know that I was a woman. I just knew that I was different, and I celebrated that. And here's the thing. Here's the thing that kind of helped me break my egg, is to realize that I liked cross-dressing. And cross-dressing was kind of like a gateway, a secret gateway at first, to uncovering that I was really much happier in embracing my femininity. And in doing so, it kind of made me realize that my perception of what happiness is was a glass ceiling, and that once I became my true version of who I was, I could surpass far beyond what I actually thought I was capable of in being happy, embracing who I was, being honest and authentic. Isn't that an amazing thing when you discover something about yourself, that you realize everything that you were seeing before was gray and now you see things in color? And so these kind of like, these are, I want to share this narrative with you because I think these narratives of always knowing and also like having crippling body dysphoria are like the narratives that are like the loudest and the most obvious, but they aren't the only narratives. And I want to provide this other kind of perspective of things, that you can not have body dysphoria, that you can actually not have always known, and that you can just be a normal person, but maybe there's something that feels off. And I think that is kind of the indicator to really expand and to look into, is that little thing that may feel off, or that little thing that you really like. Like for me, it was cross-dressing, and then that was my gateway into discovering so much more. And then in retrospect, I could look back at my life and see all of those little thoughts and those little moments where I actually did want to be a woman and I just didn't realize it. And then once I could complete the cycle of accepting that I was a woman, I could look back and say, oh, it was actually like at age 5 that it began right there. And then at age 12, when I was looking into the mirror and going through puberty and what I was wishing that I would become instead, because there was this loop of a thought which said, well, you weren't born a woman, so that's it. That's the end of the story. So you're a man. Put you in the box, close it, we're done. Those kind of self-perpetuating loops also create denial. And watch yourself when you think these thoughts. You can think and have beliefs that will snap you back into the frame of normality, the paradigm that prevents you from shifting, prevents you from changing, prevents you from growing. Where are those thoughts? Like if I ask you right now, like, what thoughts do you loop over and that you feel keep you stuck? And how can you approach these thoughts in a way that's curious and new and changes the perspective and allows you to grow and expand in a new way? So I hope that was helpful, and write me your story down below. I think other people should check out the stories of other people down below and see what the narratives look like, because we need more diversity of narratives for trans people. And by the way, check out my Patreon if you want to join me for a mindfulness workshop or just want to hop in my Discord and hang out and chat with me. I'm now offering different tiers, and I'd love to see and hear from you. Thanks again. Thanks for joining me. Bye.